Good Friday morning, everyone. It's a rainy day, but it's nice and bright in here, isn't it, Jay? Thanks, as always, to Jay and to Vicki for helping us interpret this morning. As always, we're going to start with the numbers. I talked to the health commissioner, Greg Kesterman, this morning. So our positive cases stand at 1,572. Delta is 192 cases. Remember that since Monday. Hospitalizations are at 311. The Delta is 29. And deaths have climbed to 93. The Delta is 13. 350 people have recovered in Hamilton County in his jurisdiction. As you can see, we're still losing people in this community to the coronavirus. So the governor made some significant announcements yesterday, and I'm going to reiterate just a couple of them because we, as many other elected officials I know, are getting a lot of questions related to opening up and what the timing is. So I'm going to reiterate just a couple of things that the governor said yesterday so that people are aware of the timeframes for the openings. So first of all, restaurants and bars in Ohio will be permitted to reopen as follows. Outdoor dining can open on May 15th, which is next Friday. And then dine-in service will open on May 21st, which is the following Thursday. So my friends at Price Hill Chili can put tables in the parking lot and have outdoor dining. Now, the health commissioner did emphasize that this has to be safely spaced so that people aren't sitting close to one another, even if they're outside. And when it comes to personal care services, such as hair salons, barbershops, day spas, nail salons, and tanning facilities, they may reopen on May 15th, so again, next Friday. To ensure that these establishments operate in the safest manner possible, Governor DeWine's Personal Services Advisory Group created a detailed list of guidelines and best practices for personal care service providers and bars and restaurants. And the information on those guidelines can be found at the website coronavirus.ohio.gov. So just wanted to reiterate what we heard yesterday at the governor's press conference. So although the governor has announced phased openings for more and more categories of business, it remains crucial that we continue to wear masks, wash hands, and practice safe social distancing. While the opening feels good in many respects, it also represents significant risks as more people come into contact with one another. So please be careful, or we could take a big step backwards with the spread of COVID-19 and find ourselves having to go back to a stay-at-home order, and I know none of us want that. Today we're going to hear from Assistant County Administrator Holly Chrisman on a hot topic, which is new funding for small businesses. But before we get to that, I just want to make a couple of announcements and share a couple of items that are uplifting. The first is that starting tonight and continuing through the evenings of through May 15th, so now through May 15th, from 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., both Hamilton County Stadium scoreboards will light up their signage with Light Ohio Blue signs in support of law enforcement. So those stadiums obviously are the Bengals and the Red stadiums, and we are grateful to the Bengals and the Reds for taking this initiative and providing this light of hope, and thanks to our first responders, who, as everyone knows, are very stressed at this time, responding in a really weird time out in the community. I'd also like to give another shout out to Rose Sturts. We've talked about Rose before. She's the Delhi Township trustee who is with her sewing group sewing masks for frontline workers over at JFS. She has now sewn a lot of kids' masks for the kids in foster care. I think we have, there's the light blue graphic. It looks awesome. And there are the little kids' masks. They're adorable. They're tiny. Some of them have Mickey Mouse on them. They've got lions and giraffes and polka dots, and they're really awesome. It's a great example of giving back, and we're really grateful to Rose and her sewing circle for, there they are, for sewing these masks. I know there are more to come. Oh, the mask I'm wearing there is also one that was sewn by the sewing circle. So thank you so much. They're really great. They're really fun. Thanks for that bright spot. All right, so now we're going to get into the topic of the day. So I'm going to give a little bit of a broader context to the small business assistance that we're going to focus on. So we've been talking about the CARES Act dollars for a couple of weeks now. It's this $142 million that counties over 500,000 received from the federal government. As you know, we have been trying to get the guidelines for those dollars from the Department of Treasury. We have recently gotten some guidelines. They do continue to change as the days roll by, and so it is a weird predicament to know that you've got the ability to be helpful, but not really 100% sure what the flexibility of the dollars is going to look like. So we got some clarity a couple of days ago, and we are starting to now move forward with what we think we know. And so, because, you know, some of these programs we want to do, you know, whether we get additional flexibility or not. And so I'm going to speak broadly about this fund. We passed a motion, a number, maybe it was last week, maybe it was the week before, on the county commission side to create some policy around these dollars, some policy direction for the administration. And so we're going to talk about the strategy. It's kind of the work plan. It is a work in progress, and things will likely change as we move through this. But I wanted to give you kind of an overview of what we're thinking. The programs will be implemented and rolled out over the next few days and weeks, just to give you a bit of a time frame. So we've got some major categories. The first is our public health response. It is a large portion of these dollars, and so the specific response will be related to PPE, so personal protective equipment. Think masks, gowns, gloves, all the things that are going to the healthcare system, to the medical professionals, to the first responders in the field, think firefighters, police officers, to those that are frontline workers. So we're going to invest right now in PPE for now, and in case we need it come the fall, if we've got a resurgence, we don't want to be caught off guard and not have enough PPE to provide to the frontline providers in this community. We're also going to put dollars towards expanded testing. What we know is to be successful as we start to roll open, we need increased testing. We are partnering with the Health Collaborative. I mean, obviously the county doesn't do testing, but with our medical partners, we are looking to roll that out, and we want to make sure we provide enough resources there to have increased testing. We're also going to be providing some assistance to vulnerable communities. Those include homeless sheltering. This is the rehousing. We've already done some of this. We expect that need will continue. Veterans, the folks served by DDS, that's Developmental Disabilities Services. Our senior population, folks that are victims of domestic and gender-based violence. The PRC program by JFS. Mental health. And expanded testing, again, in underserved communities. So in addition to just expanded testing generally for people that need it and qualify for it, we're going to try to do some expanded testing where there are congregate settings. So these are group homes, these are public housing like CMHA, some of those facilities, particularly if they're senior facilities. Some of these group settings have been asking for the ability to test their populations. We are going to try to respond to that, especially for vulnerable and underserved communities. The next pot is community and economic assistance. So this is primarily going to be rental assistance. Again, partnering. We've already done some rental assistance with legal aid and other partners in the community, so we will be able to use those partnerships to provide some of the rental assistance that we're thinking about. Assisting nonprofits that provide important human services in the community, and then small business assistance, which we're going to hear more about today. The last pot is related to county operations. These are some of the flexible dollars that we've been talking about. The flexibility has primarily come related to public safety. So the sheriff's office, the sheriff patrols out in our community, those are things that will see some resource coming from these CARE dollars. These will also apply to some of the redeployed employees that we have. We've got folks that were on furlough that have now been redeployed primarily to public health, so they can help with contact tracing to relieve the burden as we start to open up. We know we're going to see an increase there. Remote operations is something we've had to invest in, and also sanitizing our buildings as we open up to employees and to the public. We need to make sure that our buildings are sanitized and safe. So those are the investments related to the county operational response. More to come on this, by the way. We'll get some more detail and some more meat on the bone, but people have been asking about this, and I wanted to make sure that people were aware that we're working on it, and hopefully next week some of this stuff's going to roll out. All right, so now on to the main topic of the day, small business assistance. I'm pleased to announce this morning the new Small Business Assistance Pilot Program for Hamilton County. Starting next week, small businesses in Hamilton County will be able to apply for forgivable loans up to $10,000 per business. The overall pot is closer, and Holly, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, to about $5 million. That's what we're going to start with. We are trying to help those small businesses that did not get federal assistance, so that they did not, it's not that they didn't necessarily qualify for the PPP, they just didn't get it. The money ran out before they got that assistance. I have actually talked to some business owners, as has Holly, and others that are kind of on this team trying to work through this. And we were asking these business owners, what would you use the money for? And is $10,000 a decent amount, enough to help you get over the hump? Because we don't want to do something that's not consequential to these businesses. The answer back was yes. 10,000 is a good number. We will use it for things like rent, utilities. Think about a restaurant or a bar that needs to bring in inventory that they got rid of, and so not the liquor so much, I suppose, but more of the food and things that are served at restaurants. I used to be a small business owner. I used to own a coffee house, and I will tell you, inventory went bad pretty quickly at the coffee house, especially related to food. And so this will help them ramp up their store of inventory. And payroll. I mean, these are the kinds of things that money will go for. As I said, we have about $5 million set aside for the first round of loans, forgivable loans, we anticipate in many, many cases. And we expect to expand the program in the future, depending on the demand. I mean, the reason for the first tranche is to make sure that we're kind of hitting the mark. We expect a high volume of response to this. We're a little trepidatious about it because we might get a high volume, but really that's the good news if we get a high volume of people that want to take advantage of these dollars. So you can see that we're targeting, and Holly's going to go into this, there's small businesses, businesses that are vulnerable right now and might not stay open were it not to be for some of this funding. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over, before I talk about too many of the details, to Assistant County Administrator Holly Chrisman so that she can walk us through the program. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you, Commissioner Dreihaus. I appreciate the introduction and all of your leadership, as well as the Commissioner Summer-Dumas and Commissioner Parks on this initiative. As Commissioner Dreihaus mentioned, I'm honored to be here today and share some preliminary information on our small business program. As Commissioner Dreihaus mentioned, this is per Board of County Commissioner guidance on the use of the CARES Act dollars. First and foremost, we are so proud to be able to be a strong partner with so many other organizations, businesses, and residents who are helping our small business community this time. We could spend, Commissioner Dreihaus, an hour, I think, going through all of the work that our partners, residents have been doing to help businesses. And I just feel obligated to name a couple that we have seen. Obviously, we have seen the assistance from the federal government come through to many of our businesses. We have seen private sector programs and property owners step up with rent deferrals. We have seen creative, very uber local programs like 3CDC's gift card program. And also, I can't go on without thanking all of Hamilton County residents, all of you who have committed to doing carryout, all of you who have committed to buying gift cards, all of you who have done curbside pickup for retail stores. You're really helping our local businesses weather this storm that we're all in right now. So thank you so much. And to the small businesses, you've been so inspiring to all of us. The quick pivot that so many of you have taken over the past month. Who would have thought that as a retail store, you would suddenly be switching to getting text messages from your customers and having curbside pickup available, or a restaurant who's quickly adapting to figure out how to do carryout service. It's been so inspiring to see this, and we're happy, again, to try and be a partner as best we can. So with that, Commissioner Dreihaus did a great job providing an overview of our program. We are continuing to finalize the guidelines. We're hoping to launch this in a couple of weeks. And preliminary criteria, as the Commissioner mentioned, is we're looking at a forgivable loan of approximately $10,000. That funding could be used for things like rent. It could be used for payroll. We're also seeing a need potentially for help with funding liquor license permit renewals. Also potentially using it if businesses need to make some adaptations as we start doing a reopening to ensure the safety of their employees and their customers. We are looking at right now businesses with less than $1 million in gross revenue. And as Commissioner Dreihaus mentioned, we are looking to reach those businesses who may not have been able to apply or have not received federal assistance already. And as Commissioner Dreihaus mentioned, we are using our CARES Act dollars for this program, which does have very strict requirements that the funding has to be used for COVID-related expenses. So one of the requirements will be for businesses to submit documentation that does show that they have had a revenue reduction due to COVID-19 of roughly at least 50%. So that's the preliminary criteria. We are working over the next week to 10 days to finalize it, to work with our partners to make sure that we haven't forgotten any criteria, to make sure that this is appropriate and ready to launch. We do want to make it clear, I think we've seen this with many other programs, we do anticipate an overwhelming response, and we know that. It's a reality. It's a reality to what we are seeing throughout the country and other programs similar to this one. And I think that that is a concern. However, that concern should not freeze us from taking action and trying to be a strong partner with our business community and all of our other partnerships that we've developed over the past several months and several years. I'd like to thank as well HCDC and Hamilton County Planning and Development for their help in structuring this program. I'd also like to thank feedback we're receiving and will be receiving from the chambers, including the Chamber of Commerce, including the African American Chamber, including Robert Bell with our Hamilton County Office of Economic Inclusion, and many other of the businesses that have talked to HCDC or talked to community development to help us get this program to the spot where we're getting ready to launch in a couple of weeks. With that, Commissioner Dreihaus, did I forget anything? Or anything you'd like me to expand upon?
Good, sounded good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so as you can see, we are starting to roll out some of the program related to the CARES Act funding. Thank you for mentioning that the restrictions are that it has to be money that responds to COVID-19. So you're going to see all these strategies applied to that criteria, which is the criteria from the federal government, as it should be. I mean, there are many, many needs, and we're starting to roll out some programs related to what we know is happening in the community. So with that, Bridget, Holly and I are happy to take questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our first question is from Jay Hanselman with WVXU News, and it's for you, Commissioner.
Good morning, Jay.
I was wondering, you mentioned the three pots of money, the public health response, the community economic assistance, and county operations from the CARES money. Do you have a total of the each one of those, or the overall of the 142 that's being used for those three areas?
So I may have not stated that clearly. There are actually 4 pots. So let me go through them real quick. And I have a dollar amount that we have associated with them. These are flexible numbers because, as you just heard, things might change. But to give you an idea, so the first pot is the public health response. That's the PPE and the testing primarily, and public health. So that's around 50 million. The assistance to vulnerable communities, homeless, DDS, mental health programming, that's around 18 million. The community and economic assistance, it says rental assistance, nonprofits and small businesses, that's around 27 million. And then the county operational response, this includes safety in particular, and then some of what we have to do for safety measures in county buildings, that's around 34 million. So I have not checked the math on that, and they are general numbers, but I think that gives you a sense of where the priorities lie and what we're trying to do with these dollars. Hope that answers the question.
For the 142. So would there be any left if you get any flexibility to help other jurisdictions in the county?
You know what? We have talked about this. Remember, we do these jurisdiction calls twice a week with all the communities in Hamilton County. Remember that they are getting some dollars from the state government. So same dollars. It's CARES Act money. The county got some because of our size, but the state got money to distribute then down to the local communities that are not over 500,000 people. So the governor just talked about that first tranche moving out into the communities, so they are going to see some of that. But you are correct that if we can help augment those dollars, we're willing to do that. And so we're waiting to see what that formula looks like here on the ground, and then we would be the second dollars in. And so we've talked about the communities about this, but yeah, we're holding a little bit back to say if we can be helpful there to the outlying jurisdictions, we'd like to do that. Remember, a lot of this small business assistance will be in those outlying communities in those smaller jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question is from Chris Wederick with the Business Courier.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Three questions, I guess, on the small business program. I'll let you guys figure out who needs to answer them.
I already know it's going to be Holly, but go ahead.
Gotcha. Have the feds set a limit on how much of the CARES Act money that you guys have can be used for small business?
No.
Great.
And I got that from Holly. She's standing in the wings, right? She's 6 feet away. So,
gotcha.
No. I'm going to elaborate just real quick. So what we're talking about is what we view as a reasonable amount to address. I think the need is, remember the criteria is limited to really small businesses that are struggling right now that didn't get those federal dollars. So that's a bit of a niche. And so, because we think that's where the greatest need is. So $5 million has been allocated at this moment in time, but we are ready to increase that dollar amount if we find that the need is greater than that $5 million. I mean, it's going to ebb and flow a little bit, but we are not restricted by the federal government as to how much we spend in that space.
Great. Do you know how many businesses meet that qualification of having 1 million or less of gross revenue? Do you have any idea? Is that hundreds or thousands of businesses potentially?
I'm turning it over to Holly.
Good morning, Chris. I do not have that information. We did work with our partners at HCDC and Planning and Development to help put this criteria through, and they did look at a lot of programs nationwide, as well as talking to a handful of businesses within Hamilton County. We can try and find that information, but I don't have it at this point.
Sorry, I have maybe two more here. If businesses got PPP money from the feds, are they, just to be clear, are they barred from getting money from this fund, or do they just go back to the back of the line? How do you think about that at this point?
Yeah, Our criteria right now is if they've already received federal assistance, this program would not be eligible for them.
Okay,
Would
great.
not be eligible for this program.
And who specifically granted permission? Was this just guidelines the federal government issued, or was there a specific individual you guys asked? It seems like a lot of communities would be interested in doing this down the road, maybe if they could, if they had the money.
Struggled question.
Bridget, can you help us?
How did you guys get word that the program's money could be used for this? Was this something that there were written guidelines issued that indicated this, or did you have to ask somebody?
Oh, okay. So Chris, you cut out a little bit, but I guess what I heard was, were there written guidelines that we went by in developing this program from the feds?
Oh, for the small business program? No, we did not. The guidance we received from Treasury is that we can use our CARES Act dollars for a small business program as long as there is a direct link to impacts from COVID-19. But no, we did not get federal guidance on this. We worked again through our experts at HCDC and planning and development to look at, again, programs across the country that have already done this to help set preliminary criteria. And to be clear, we are finalizing that criteria, and we are, again, as I mentioned, Chris, working with our partners starting early next week to help finalize it and make sure we have the best program we can, but also be quick to get money out the door.
Another question, and then I'll let you go. Sorry. Are nonprofits eligible for this?
At this point, it is for-profit businesses. Yes, but we do have, we've mentioned, as Commissioner Dreihaus mentioned, in the CARES Act dollars, we do have funding for nonprofits, again, that were directly related to the COVID-19 and the response to that.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Let me just elaborate a little bit, because today we're focused on the small business piece because we're going to be rolling it out here pretty soon. There is a nonprofit component in the list that I read earlier, and the larger amounts, and so we will be rolling that out shortly. But today we're just focused on the small business piece. Thanks, Chris.
Our next question comes from Hannah Sparling with the Inquirer.
Hey, Hannah.
Morning. Two questions. So you guys said these are forgivable loans. Are there criteria for that forgiveness? And is there any place businesses can go right now to get information or start applying, or is it kind of a waiting game for now?
Great question. Right now, we are looking, like I said, at forgivable loans up to $10,000. We have the loan, as it's written right now, would be forgivable as long as the business retained at least one full-time job or created one full-time job within 3 months after receiving the funds. So we're trying to be generous, but also ensure them that we have requirements in place. But we think that the one full-time, we hope, is allows businesses to apply for this funding with limited restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
And what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Is there any place businesses could go to get information or
Oh,
start
at this
applying now?
time, but we will, we don't have any information online yet. As I mentioned, we are going to be finalizing the criteria with all of our partners starting next week. And so you will see additional information after that point.
Thank you.
Looks like we have one more question for Commissioner Dreihaus from Jay Hanselman.
And Denise, you may not know the answer to this, and if you don't, that's fine. It
I
might
love it when you start like that, Jay. Gives me a great deal of confidence.
It might be a better question for the health commissioner. I believe yesterday when Governor DeWine was announcing the reopening requirements, especially on the part about the indoor dining, that he mentioned something about, or the person in charge of the group that did that they were going to have to submit like a floor plan to show how they were going to comply with the spacing. Do you know if that is indeed the case? Is this going to have to be approved by somebody? And does the county have the capacity to look at all those floor plans in 2 weeks to say if somebody can reopen or not? You're supposed to do the right thing.
So Greg Kesterman is going to be here on Monday, kind of in anticipation of that question and others. So he is ramping up capacity at the health department. As we've mentioned before, we have lent employees, we've redeployed them to the health department, knowing that as we start to reopen up, they are going to get these calls from individuals who either they're employees or they're patrons of a business that don't feel safe, or a business owner that's seeking guidance. Remember, we've done this once before, right? And so the state has said that it'll be up to the local health departments. And remember, there are two. The city has its own health department, and then the county health department that has jurisdiction over the entire county minus the city. So just to be clear. And so Melba Moore is the health commissioner for the city, Greg Kesterman for the county. But yeah, I think Greg anticipates getting those calls, having to deploy staff people to go on site out throughout the community and determine whether or not the seating is distanced far enough, whether it's a safe environment for the employees. And so I think we'll hear from Greg on Monday that he's going to deal with that as the calls come in. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I do not see Greg proactively going out to every single business and saying, oh, okay, I'm here to inspect. We don't have the capacity to do that, and I don't know that that's even reasonable. But remember, as we see businesses open up and the health department has to make these determinations, we are also going to see an increase in the number of folks that test positive for COVID-19. That's the expectation. And so his staff is going to have to not only do these inspections, but also the contact tracing that comes along with opening up. So Greg and I have talked about, I'm really concerned about the capacity over at Public Health. They have doubled their staff at this moment in time, but we've seen this played out in different areas where the capacity is not there. So he's ramping up. He feels confident right now. I actually went over a couple days ago with my mask on to visit the folks that work at Public Health, and they are confident that they've got the staff to work on both fronts with the increased capacity that everybody's given. So we'll talk to him on Monday about that, but that's my understanding of his approach to this.
Thank you.
We neglected to talk about, Holly, correct me if I'm wrong, you have been talking, when we talk about partnerships, especially related to the small business piece of what we're doing. And by the way, these partnerships are playing out through all the CARES Act dollars. We have partners that are out in the community helping us with rental assistance right now. We're talking to the nonprofit community right now. We're talking to small businesses right now. So all of what we're doing is it's in partnership with Public Health. It's in partnership with EMA, right? Everything's in partnership. And so there was a committee, correct me if I'm wrong, that was established or talked to about how to best determine how to spend these dollars, right? Can you talk just a little bit about that group?
Thank you. Yes, we had a group meet, actually it was yesterday morning, to walk through these buckets of funding pots that Commissioner Dreihaus mentioned, the public health response, the community and economic response, the county operational response, and the help for vulnerable populations. And we did have a small group that represented, we had a township on there, a village, we had the Urban League, we had United Way, HCDC, Public Health, and I believe Hamilton County Emergency Management Agency, just to have a small group, just to look through this list and say, are there big things that we're missing? Just as a first blush. And we did receive, Commissioner Dreihaus, some very good feedback and also compliments as well. And we did make some minor adjustments. So I'd like to thank this small group of folks that we, again, quickly convened to make sure we didn't miss any major needs in the community. I'd also like to, if you don't mind, I've mentioned a few that we've also worked with on the small business program, African American Chamber, the Greater Cincinnati Chamber, READY, HCDC, Planning and Development. We've talked with some communities about this program. And in addition, one pot of money we haven't talked about also is our community development block grant dollars that are separate from the CARES Act. But again, we've had some additional funding be able to be released to nonprofits to help with this response to the pandemic. And there are so many silver linings that we're seeing. And we all try and be as optimistic as we can, but it has been amazing to see the partnerships that we've had, the new people we've met, that we are working so closely with right now. It's just been inspiring to see our community come together, and I look forward to that continuing, not only now, not only through this pandemic, but once it's passed.
All right, thank you, Holly. No more questions, I assume, Bridget? All right, very good. Thank you again to Holly Chrisman for being here to talk about the Small Business Assistance Program being rolled out by the county. Again, remember, tonight through next Friday, look at the scoreboards down at the Reds and Bengals stadiums. It's Light Ohio Blue for a week from 9 to 10:30 at night. So, you know, it's the weekend. You can cruise around with your family in the station wagon or van. Oh, sorry, that was me back when I was a kid. With the paneled station wagon. We all remember this, right? And look at the scoreboards. I think it's a great thing to do. It gives us hope. So thank you so much to the Reds and the Bengals for doing that. Again, we're going to have Greg Kesterman, the health commissioner, here on Monday to dig in a little bit with what, Jay, I think you were asking related to things starting to open back up. And I want to finally say happy Mother's Day to those of you out there who are moms. It's going to be a weird Mother's Day, as it has been a weird birthdays and everything else that we're trying to celebrate during COVID-19 times. But happy Mother's Day to everybody. Hang in there, be safe, and we'll be back on Monday. Thank you.